Hello, my name is Marlo Hoskin. I work for the Pacific Community, the Oceanic Fisheries Program. This is a video tutorial about the OLLO application for Android devices. OLLO stands for Offline LongLine Observer. This app can be used by observers monitoring the activities of longline fishing vessels operating in the Western and Central Pacific Ocean area. To launch OLLO, please press on the OLLO icon on your tablet. At this stage, we'll invite you to select the country for which your observer program is undertaking this trip. I will select OFP as. Allow the application a few moments to load. Now we'll invite you to configure the application by pressing the Next button. First, press in this search bar, which opens up a keyboard, and enter either your name or your code. Once you see your name and your code, select it and press Next. Now select your observer program from this drop-down list. And press OK. And finally, press Finish Setup. So now OLLO is ready for a new observer trip. Although OLLO can be used offline, at this point, you could actually turn off your Wi-Fi. I am going to remain online for the purpose of this training. So I will invite you now to press on Add New Observer Trip. As you can see, the observer program, the name of the observer is already listed. I'll invite you now to press to the right of the trip code partial number in blue. This pops up a keyboard. Let's say, for example, that this is my trip number 6 this year. So I input 06 and the trip code here is created. Let's take an example as if I were boarding a vessel the same day that this vessel is setting sail. And I am in my home port. So the departure date of the vessel is today, and the departure time is the time currently provided by the device. The date and the time can be changed by pressing on today for the date and selecting a day, a month, and a year. Similar with the time, by pressing on the little dial, this opens up a clock where the hours, then the minutes can be changed. Let's pick a departure port. I'm leaving from Noumea. And the vessel is departing the same date and the same port. I'm going to select my vessel name. This opens up a search bar and a keyboard. And this field here allows me to write, excuse me, any comments about this trip that I'm about to undertake. This is a test trip, and it is important when undertaking tests of OLLO to write in the comments that this is a test trip. Now you'll notice the red button with a photo icon and SUP1, SUP2. By pressing on this SUP1, SUP2 button, this opens up a camera option, which allows you to take a picture of your SUP1 form, which is the observer placement form. Then you have the option of either retrying to take that picture or to press OK. Once you press OK, that photo has been saved, and it is also available in the gallery. So at this stage, you have created your observer trip and you can press Done. After creating a new observer trip, this opens up all the other forms in OLLO. I will now invite you to press on Edit the header of the observer trip. If you scroll down, you can see the trip details, which have already been entered. Obviously, these can be edited, but I'll invite you to scroll back up. Let's look at how to enter some data for the LL1, which is essentially the general information about this trip. Let's press on Crew Countries. This is to indicate the nationality composing the crew of the vessel. So press on Click to pick a country and enter the code of a country. Let's say PG, for example, for Papua New Guinea. Let's say that we had 5 crew members from Papua New Guinea. We also had other crew members from other nationalities, so let's press on Add New Country. And let's select FM for Federated States of Micronesia, and we had 5 crew from Federated States of Micronesia. Press Done if you're done, and press Add New Country if you have other nationality crew members. Now let's press on Devices. This is the list of the most common types of devices, electronic devices found on LongLine vessels. I'll invite you to press on GPS. The question initially is whether or not this equipment is installed on the vessel. Press on the moving dot to activate it. This indicates that the device GPS is installed on the vessel. Now indicate the usage. You have the code on the left-hand side and the description of the code on the right-hand side. In this case, GPS is used all the time. You can then, in the make field, indicate the make of this equipment device. Let's say it was a Furuno model XS456 as an example. Any comments you may wish to provide about this device can be written in this comments field. I invite you to press Done. This brings you back to the LL1. If you go back to your device, you can see that now GPS has a usage code associated with it. I'll invite you to now press on Track Plotter. And now select the usage code directly, all. So this is a little trick where, because it is used all the time, we presume that this device is installed on the vessel. Again, here you would then provide the make and the model of this device. Instead of pressing Done, I'll invite you to press on the Next button on the right-hand side of the screen at the bottom. This brings us to the next device, instead of having to go back to the list of device. Let's say the depth sounder is used all the time. You would input a make and a model, and scroll down and press Next, which brings us to the next device, which is the sea surface temperature gauge. Let's say that this vessel is not equipped with this type of device, so I invite you to press NA for not applicable and press Next. Similar for sonar, I'll invite you to press NA and then Next. Radio beacon direction finder, I'll invite you to press All for use in fishing all the time. Again, indicate perhaps a make and a model. Press Next. GPS buoys, let's say not applicable. Next. Doppler current meter, let's say not applicable. Next. Bathythermograph, let's say no longer ever used. It's on the vessel, but they don't use it anymore. Press next. Now to the VMS system. Your FFA type of through VMS system 1 is used all the time for fishing. Press next. And this is not applicable as there is only one VMS on this vessel. And you can see that the next button is grayed out, meaning you have reached the end of the list of devices. Press done. Let's now look into comms and info services. These fields are pretty straightforward. A series of questions. Is the vessel equipped with a sat phone? No. Does it have a mobile phone? No. Does it have a fax? No. Does it have an email? Let's say yes. And there, enter an email if you have one for that vessel. Information services. Does it have a weather fax? No. Does it have a satellite monitor? No. Does it have other equipment for information services? Now example, no. Phytoplankton, this relates to information that can be obtained about phytoplankton concentration. This is information generally provided by the base office to vessels. So in this example, I'm going to say no, but it is possible that some vessels actually access this information directly from the vessel. SSD stands for sea surface temperature and sea height is sea height. Once you have completed the comms and info services section, press done. Let's go and describe the fishing gear used on this vessel by pressing fishing gear. You can see here the similar system as with devices. If our mainline hauler is used all the time for fishing, it means that it is installed. About a branch line hauler this time, let's say that it is not applicable. Line shooter, those are very important on long line vessels. It is used all the time. Bait thrower, let's say that this vessel rarely uses it. Auto branch line attacher, let's say not applicable. Weighing scales, let's say that they're used all the time for fishing on our example vessel. Offal disposal machine, let's say that it's no longer ever used. And advances in technology, you would either say used all the time or not applicable, and then provide any comment here. So let's say used all the time for fishing, and let's make a comment to describe what this new technology is. And so you would just do that in the comments field. Now let's describe what the main line and the fishing gear is composed of. So the main line is composed of a material which you select by pressing on the down pointing arrow, which opens up this drop-down list. I'll invite you to press monofilament, which is the most common type of material used for longline, but there are other materials. Let's say that our main line was 8 millimeters in diameter, and that it was a total of 45 nautical miles in length. Let's now look at our branch line material. It is possible to have branch lines that are made up of 3 materials. Let's keep it simple for our example, that we have one material, monofilament, making up the branch line. And the diameter of that branch line is 5 millimeters. And here you can actually further describe this branch line material if you wish to. If the branch line is equipped with a wire trace, you can press on this button to indicate it is. Some longline fishery often can add weight to their branch line. Let's say that a weight of 40 grams was placed a 1 meter away or 100 centimeter from the hook. Let's now complete the information about the hooks used on this fishing vessel. You can have up to multiple types of hooks used on some fishing vessels. For our example, let's say that only circle hooks were used during this trip. And they used a circle hook size 15-0, and they used it on 100% of the hooks. The hooks were offset, had a ring and a swivel. Continuing down onto the refrigeration method, these are questions that you can answer by yes or no. Let's say a bit of both. And you can take a picture here of the fishing gear. Press done once you have completed. Now let's look at the safety equipment. You can indicate the availability of life jackets. You can complete the number of ring life buoys on the boat. Down to life raft, there can be information up to 4 life rafts. Let's say that we had a 12-person life raft for which the inspection date was last conducted yesterday. Keep scrolling now down to your EPIRB. In the type field here, just retype 406 and indicate the number. Head 3 EPIRBs and leave this field blank and this blank as well if you don't have any information, and press done. So now we have completed all this section of the general information. I invite you to press on click to pick a captain and look for a captain's name. On some longline vessels, the big ones, there might be a specific person acting as a fishing master who may be different from the captain. In our example, like most longline vessels, the captain is the fishing master. So just repeat that information. You can select the vessel owner if you have access to that information. You can also input the metric ton hold volume of the vessel. Let's say it had a 50 metric ton. And any licenses that this vessel may be carrying that you're aware of. Now answer questions about the waste disposal, whether there is a system and whether there's a strategy for waste disposal. And if there is one, you can describe in this comments field, which then brings us back down to our trip details, which have already been conducted, which have all been provided. I invite you to press on done. Let's now look at how to record information about a fishing set. So let's say that you have arrived to the fishing ground and the crew is preparing to deploy a set. So I invite you to press on LongLine set. Press on the plus button at the bottom right-hand side of the screen. The date and time is the current time from the device. So what you can do is actually fill out some other information so that when the first radio buoy goes into the water, you can come back to here and press the now button. Let's indicate the set number, number 1. 25 hooks per baskets are planned for this set, and a total of 98 baskets are planned. The float line length is 15 meters. The line setting speed is going to be 3 meters per second. The branch line set interval is going to be 5, And you can see OLLO has calculated the distance between branch line at 15 meters. Note that you can always correct that manually if required. Let's say the branch line length is 15 meters. The vessel speed for setting is 4 knots. If there are shark lines on any of the floats, indicate this in this field. And similarly, indicate the length of shark lines, although this is a practice that seems to be uncommon. TDRs deployed is a question. TDR stands for temperature depth recorder. Let's say that the vessel did have TDRs. These can be used to determine the temperature of the water at a certain depth. Fill out the target species by selecting either tuna, sword, or shark. Let's say tuna. And respond whether all positions were observed directly. This might be a question that you respond to later about the sets. But let's say yes, for our example. Then you may indicate any mitigation that was used during the setting. Most vessels in our region are not equipped with this type of equipment. Now on to what bait was used. You have the possibility of recording up to several bait. Let's say we just had one bait on this trip and that it was a herring or sardines, that 150 kilos were used and that hooks 1 to 25 were baited with this species, and the bait was not dyed blue. Now, an important bit about your measuring instrument. Let's say that you are using a caliper, and when you calibrated that caliper against a fixed length of 1 meter, your caliper was measuring at 99 centimeters instead of 1 meter, meaning that your calibration is negative 10 millimeters, i.e. 1 centimeter. And this is something that you may also fill out later, whether you'll have any Gen 3 events recorded during the set. If you do have one to record, then you may indicate the page number in your journal, which you describe this further. And also here you may describe any unusual set details. So if we now scroll back up to our date, time, and position information for the set, if I press now, this updates the time. And this was the time when the first radio buoy went into the water. You can also notice the UTC date and time is automatically calculated based on the device for this, on the time zone for this device. And you can see the device of the time zone is GMT plus 11 hours. In the occurrence of an observer on a vessel that is conducting fishing in multiple time zones, the time zone of the device would have to be changed in order to reflect ship's time correctly. For acquiring the position of the start of the set, there are 2 ways to do this. You can either type it in manually, 4 digits for the latitude and selecting a hemisphere, and 5 digits for the longitude and selecting the hemisphere. This has now provided our position information. You may also use the Use GPS button, which acquires the position automatically using the inbuilt GPS inside the device. Once you have provided this information, scroll all the way back down and press done. So at this stage, the first radio buoy has been into the water. The observer may be observing the setting of the set. At one stage, the setting will be completed. So I'll invite you to go and provide this information by pressing on LongLine Sets, pressing on the current set number 1, and pressing on the LL2 Set Hauls button. At this stage, I invite you to turn your tablet into landscape mode. If this does not work automatically, you may want to check this icon here on your device, which locks into portrait or landscape mode. As you can see here, the start of the set was already indicated when we created the set. And now we're at a stage where we're going to create the end of the set. So I invite you to press on pick a date, then press the next red field here to select at the bottom left-hand side of the screen that we're in a set. Press in the next field, again at the bottom of the screen, select set end. Press on the time field to acquire the time. If this time needs to be changed, you can see on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, there is a little clock and the time. If you press on that, you can modify the time. Again, with position, this position can be either manually entered as such, or pressing on the blue GPS button acquires a position. You can see that when the GPS is used, the seconds of a position are also recorded. This is not strictly necessary when entering the positions manually. Okay, at this stage, the vessel has finished the setting operation and will undergo generally a period of soaking. So at this stage, I invite you to press on the back arrow on the top left-hand corner of the screen, which has the effect of saving your data. You can actually put your tablet on hold or go back to the main menu and close your tablet until you're ready to use OLLO again. Let's say that we are ready to record the start of the haul. I'll invite you to press on LongLine set, select set number 1 that we're currently on, press on LongLine LL2 set hauls, press on pick a date, press on the red field and select on the bottom of the screen on the left, haul, press the next field, select haul start from the bottom of the screen, press in the red field to acquire the time, press on GPS to acquire the position. You'll notice any comments as well can be made about these particular events of the setting of the set. So at this stage, the haul is starting. I'll invite you to press on the back arrow. And now to open the LL4 by pressing on LL4 Catches tab. This action opens up the LL4 in OLLO. We'll be spending quite a bit of time on this form, so please bear with me. So let's imagine a fish has landed on the deck. You can press on the time field, which acquires the time and the date automatically. Now, specify the hook number on which this fish has been caught. Let's say, for example, hook number 5. You can either press the next button here on the bottom right-hand side of the screen or just on the next field. This will allow you to select the species. Let's imagine this was a big eye that was RGG, meaning it was retained, gilled, and gutted, and that it was caught alive. The length code for its measurement was UF, upper jaw to fork and tail, and it measured a whopping 155 centimeters. And you were able to identify it as a female by looking at the gonads. I'm going to go quite fast, faster than if a longliner was catching fish. Generally, you get a fish every 5 to 10 minutes. Fish number 2 has come on board. I have pressed in the time field. It has indicated the time and the date. You can change this time by pressing on the time itself. And if you look on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, you can see this dial where you can change the hours and the minutes. This specimen number 2 was caught on hook number 8. It was also a big eye, which was also retained, gilled, and gutted. This time it was caught dead, and we already measured it. We already know that we measure big eye UF at 145 centimeters, and the crew had gilled and gutted the fish before you were able to inspect the gonad, so you were not able to check them, and so you're uncertain, you don't know the sex of the fish, so you select unknown. Third fish has come on board on hook number 12, and this time it is a silky shark. So you can see on the line of species code on the second line, the third from the left, FAL, is our silky shark. As silky sharks are a protected, a species of special interest, at this stage, the GI field has activated where you're able to describe the gear interaction with the species of special interest. I'm going to invite you to select IHI on the bottom of your screen, which stands for hooked internally. This specimen was discarded by being cut off, and this corresponds to the code DCF. It was caught alive. Unfortunately, it was not in the best shape, but still alive when it was released, so A3. The fish the shark stayed in the water, so you were not able to measure it, so that the code for there would be NM on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, and for not measured. As you can see here, skipped the length field and brought you to the sex field, and you were able to look at the shark from the side of the boat and see claspers to identify it as a male specimen. At this stage, I'd like to introduce the button on the right-hand side of this line number 3 with 3 little black dots in the middle. If you press on that button, you will see 2 icons pop up. The first one in red is a delete button, which allows you to delete a line, and the other one is a camera button. So I'll invite you to press on the photo icon, which opens up the camera and allows you to take a picture of your specimen. And you have the options of either retry or okay. Let's say okay. So what will happen with this picture is that it will be sent along with your LL4 data. And this is a really good thing because it allows to validate a species identification by an observer. And over time, it can constitute a very interesting database of images that may be used for training purposes at the national and potential regional level. So we do encourage coordinators and observers to consider this photo taking option in the LL4 of OLLO. Let's continue on. Fish number 4 has come on board. I press on the time. It is caught on hook number 25. This time the specimen is not listed in these list of codes, so we are going to go and look for it. I'm going to then click on to pick a species button on the bottom of the screen, and I'm going to type SNK, which is a barracuda type of discard, which has been discarded as an unwanted species. It was caught dead and it was released dead. It was measured at UF, measuring 85 centimeters, and you were able to identify it as a male. Again, you were able to take a picture because this species is not very common, and you wanted to report that you identified it correctly. Press OK. Okay, at this stage, we had 25 hooks per basket, so a float has come on board and is being hauled by the crew. I'll draw your attention to the 2 buttons on top of the LL4, on the one on the right, which says Add Basket. I invite you to press on Add Basket. Essentially, this tallies that you have monitored 1 whole basket, 1 out of the 98 basket that was set. I'll now draw your attention on the button on the left-hand side, which says Add Whole Log. I'll invite you to press on this one. It is standard for observers to report an intermediate position during the haul every hour approximately. And this is how they would do it by pressing this Add Whole Log, and which pops up this window with a time already, the real time, and the availability to input a position. So press Use GPS or input the position manually, write any comments as necessary, and press Done. On to our next fish. We press on the time, which populates the time and the date. This fish was caught on hook number 5. It was this time a short bill spearfish. So let's say you don't have a species ID guide, but you do remember that this is a short bill spearfish. So you write the name, and there it is, SSP. Okay, and this was retained, gilled, and gutted. It was caught alive and humanely put down. It was measured at LF at a total of 86 centimeters, identified as a female. Again, you were pretty keen on this photo feature and were able to take a picture of your specimen. And this can be particularly useful if, for example, next fish coming on board on hook number 8 was a swordfish, which was in our line of species there. That was quite fast. And it was retained, gilled, and gutted. No, it was retained, gilled, and head, RHG. And this one had been caught dead, measured LF, but it was such a small one. It was a 35, oh, let's say it was a 55 centimeter long LF, a swordfish. And you checked the gonads, but they were so small that you were not able to determine the sex of this specimen. And again, because you measured a very small fish, but it was real, you took a picture of this fish, and this has in the future allowed the debriefer to validate that this low length fish was actually really measured at 55 centimeters LF. Let's keep working some of those data quality checks. Let's say that we caught the next specimen on hook number 12. Oh, I made a mistake on purpose. It was hook number 12 and not 122. So that's one of the data quality checks that OLLO operates. Let's say that we caught a yellowfin, which was retained for crew consumption because it had been caught dead. You were not able to measure it because it had been eaten by a shark, and you were still able to identify it as a female because parts of the gonads were left over. And this was too gruesome to take a picture. Next fish came up on hook number 15, and this time it was a wahoo. It was retained, gilled, and gutted. It was caught alive, but you didn't know what condition, and it was measured at UF at 125 centimeters, quite a big wahoo, and it was identified as a female. Next fish, press the time, caught on hook number 18. It was an albacore, retained, gilled, and gutted. It was caught dead, measured UF at 155 centimeters and identified it as a male. And you can see here I inputted a rather very large albacore length. So this has been picked up by OLLO. It could have been a data entry error, maybe a 115. centimeter long albacore would be more correct. This is to also point out that if you do see one of these errors pop up for a particular specimen, you're still able to continue using OLLO. The idea is not to prevent you from submitting or entering this data, but certainly warning you that there is something not right with it. So let's say we caught our last specimen on hook number 25. It was a blue shark, which was DCF, discarded, cut off, and both it was caught alive and healthy and released alive and healthy. It was not measured NM because it was in the water, and you were not able to check the sex of this shark. And you realized that you had made a mistake for this albacore, that it wasn't 168, but 108. Okay, so at this stage, a float has come on board. And again, I remind you of this add basket button on the top of the LL4. So press the add basket, and you can see now that we have tallied 2 baskets out of 98. Let's keep going with some examples of our LL4. I press on the time field to acquire the time and the date. Next specimen is caught on hook number 5. It is not listed in our list of species. And it turns out it was a pelagic stingray. So I press to select a species and type in PLS, which stands for pelagic stingray. Then it was discarded, cut off. It was dead, and it was dead when it was released. You were not able to measure it nor determine its sex. You were still, however, able to take a picture of this specimen and press OK. On to our next specimen. I press the time to acquire the time and the date, real time. And it was caught on hook number 9. This time we have caught something that's in our list. We have caught an ALX, which is a type of lancet fish. And this was discarded as an unwanted species. And it was alive, and it was alive when it was released. You were able to measure UF at 68 centimeters, but you did not check the sex. Sorry, you didn't check it, it was unknown. Next specimen, press the time, indicate the hook number, select the species. Let's say we had a big eye again, that this one was retained, headed and gutted, that it was caught alive. It was measured at UF. And this big eye was measured at 155 centimeters, and it was identified as a female. Okay, I think at this stage, folks, you're starting to get a good understanding of how the LL4 works. Our advice for testing the LL4 is to take some past workbooks and essentially copy and enter the data and try and get a feel for how this would work in the real world out on a LongLine vessel. Some observers that have initially tested OLLO before becoming fully accustomed to it, while at sea, they would record on the paper on the waterproof LL4, and then in the comfort of the room, they would then enter the data into OLLO. Some observers took a different approach and used the tablet to enter the LL4 data into OLLO, and then copied that back into the workbook form. Obviously, the idea is not to continue this dual reporting for too much longer. It is a decision of the coordinator and the observer program, and between the observer to determine at which stage only OLLO can be used to record data. So I'll invite you to press on the back arrow on the top left-hand corner, which brings us back to the LongLine set specification. So let's assume that our LongLine set was now finished. I'll invite you to press on the first tab again, the set hauls. As you can see, we have an intermediate haul position there on that fourth row. The first three rows for memory is the set start, the set end, the haul start. This fourth row is the intermediate haul. And so I'm going to invite you to press on pick a date to indicate the haul end. Press the time field to indicate the time of the haul end, and GPS button to acquire the position for the haul end. Then I invite you to press on the back arrow on the top left of your screen. Brings us back to our LongLine set number 1. If there are any details to edit for this set, then you can scroll through the LongLine set. And if you're done, I invite you to press on that back arrow. Okay, so this brings us back to our main page. We have now another bunch of forms, mainly the gen forms to go through, and how to authenticate yourself, finish the trip and upload. So without further ado, let's have a look at Gen 1 fish transfer and how that form works. We don't have any at the moment, so I'll invite you to press on the blue button on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Again, date and time is provided by the devices. Date and time, use the GPS button to acquire the position, indicate a vessel name, that this is the other vessel name, indicate its type, and that this vessel had received 5 metric tons of yellowfin. And for this, you will need to select a code that it was receiving 5 metric tons. Any particular comments, you can describe them here. Press done. And as you can see, under Gen 1 fish transfer, we have one form, one line if you want, and you can keep adding those by pressing the blue button. Let's now take a look at the Gen 2 interaction. The Gen 2 interaction are to record interactions of species of special interest that do not interact with the primary gear of the vessel. So as you saw before in the LL4 example, when we caught a silky shark, that is when we recorded Gen 2 interaction by specifying the gear interaction code IHI for hooked internally. So let's say here that we had a blue whale that came up next to the boat. It was a curious blue whale, so you can either type in the code or type in blue, and you can see the second one here, BLW, blue whale. I select it, and I happen to be with my tablet, so the start time was 9:21. It ended at 9:25. I used my GPS to acquire this position, and I'm going to select an interaction code, and it was beside the vessel. And then I press OK, and the interaction started at 1 meter from the vessel and ended at 10 meters away from the vessel. I estimated that, well, no, it wasn't caught, so you don't need to fill out this information over here. I estimated that it was 15, yes, it was 15 meters in length, and it was one adult. And obviously you have the opportunity to take a picture or describe the species. Now I invite you to press on done. Let's now have a look at our Gen 2 interaction, Gen 2 sighting form. Again, add one by pressing on the blue plus button. Indicate a date, acquire a position or enter it manually. Select a sighting code, and we saw it was distance swimming, and we saw one individual, and it was a, I think we call them melon-headed whale. And again, you were able to take a picture, and you press done. Okay, keep going down. Our sightings, Gen 1 sightings, sorry, we skipped that one. Let's add a Gen 1 sighting, selecting a date and a time, and acquiring a position or inputting it manually, describing a vessel name. Let's say this was another vessel, still a longline vessel, and you saw it at a bearing of 050 degrees at a distance of 2 nautical miles. And you were able to see that, well, you guessed that it was possibly fishing. And you can take a picture and provide any comments about this sighting. Once you have provided the information required, press done. Brings us back to our main menu. So as you can see, we have completed information for at least one information for all of these Gen forms. We will come back to the Gen 3 in a minute. So I'd like to take you to the Gen 6 pollution report first. Create a report by pressing the plus button. Provide a date and a time and a position. Provide a course of the vessel. Let's say it was going 080. It was going at 5 knots. The seas were calm. You weren't able to acquire any information about the current. However, the vessel was fishing. This was the vessel that you are on, so the Drehu. It is a longline vessel. Since you were on the vessel, you don't need to provide this information. And let's say that they dumped waste. For now, just say plastic. I'll show you how to detail that in a minute. There's a question about whether there were any MARPOL regulations on this vessel. Let's say that there were, yes, and that you were able to take some photos. And I think by now you know how to take pictures. And then you go into Gen 6 pollution details. Describe that it was waste dumped overboard, that it was plastics. Here we go. Description, and you can say the bait wrappers, and that you estimate about 5 kilos of that was thrown overboard, and press done. Okay, and obviously you can have more and more pollution details for each pollution report. So once you're finished, press done. Okay, so now I'm going to invite you to press on the Gen 3, where all the Gen 3 questions are listed here. If you press on one of them, this opens up the question again with the possibility of providing a yes or no answer. Once you've provided an answer, you can press done if you press no, which brings you back to this list. And then if you press on the next one, provide an answer. Instead of pressing done, you can notice the next button on the right-hand side of the screen. If you press that, it brings you to the next question. So I'm going to go fairly quick over here to show you how to answer some of these questions. Let's say that there was a Gen 3 issue with this one. They didn't display their license. It was indicated in journal page number 2, and you can actually go and describe this detail by providing a date and pressing comments, which opens up a large text box to describe this particular event. To get out of here, this is a tiny bit tricky. Just press in the green bar on top of the screen. And now press the back arrow and press done. So brings you back to this list. As you can see, the questions that I had skipped do still appear as not answered. It is possible for observers to answer these questions at any time during an observer trip, whether on the vessel or upon returning to land. In some cases, it might be sensitive to answer some of these questions on the vessel. So, but let's continue. And for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to answer no to all the questions and go quite fast over here for the sake of time. Okay, you see I have reached the end of the questions, so the next button is grayed out, so I invite you to press on done. You have to have answered all these Gen 3 questions before you can upload and close your trip. So a quick look over here, you can see that all the questions have been answered. I invite you to press on the back arrow on the top left hand of the screen. So at this stage, we have provided all the information about our trip. Obviously, a trip would have more information, more sets, more gen forums, but this is an example. So I invite you now to press on Finish Observer Trip. So finishing an observer trip as to when this action happens should be discussed with the observer coordinator and the observer program manager, and possibly with SPC. Different observer programs might have different operating procedures. So let's go with first selecting a return port by pressing on click to pick a return port. Let's say that we ended up in another country, in Noro, for example. Oops, Noro, in the western province of the Solomon Islands. The return date was today. Obviously, you can change that if you wish to. And the return time is the device's time. You can change that as well by pressing the clock icon. The comments field that was at the start of the trip is repeated here. So you can see that we had written testing. And let's just write end. But obviously you could write more pertinent comments about your trip. Again, here you have the ability to take pictures of your SUP2 form, which is your end of placement training. Yes, end of placement form, excuse me. This button here, validate Gen 3 answers, essentially says that you have validated the answers provided on your Gen 3, and you can see now this opens up the Finish Observer Trip button, which I invite you to press. There's a little warning saying that you won't be able to edit this trip. You won't be able to edit this trip on OLLO. You will still be able to edit this trip in Toughman 2 through the debriefing process. So press OK. This is where observers are invited to sign. If they're not happy, they press clear. And when they are happy, they press done. Okay, at this stage, it's necessary for the observers to authenticate themselves. Most observers will be authenticating themselves using a Google account. So I invite you to press login using Google. Allow OLLO to check. So you can see here that I have a Google account on this tablet. It is important first to check with SPC that your Google account is authorized to upload data to Toughman 2. Then press continue. So essentially OLLO has checked that this email address is authorized to upload data to Toughman 2, which brings the application to the upload page. I invite you to press on upload. Allow the trip to upload. So this is also sending those couple of pictures that we have sent. So it is normal if this takes quite a bit of time. And you can see the data and the pictures have successfully been uploaded, and you're offered to go back, which now brings you back to a start of a new observer trip. So the data for this trip that we have entered and submitted has now left the tablet. There is an encrypted backup file that is fairly tricky to find, and that is encrypted. So in any case, this tablet would be lost or stolen after the trip has been submitted. There would be no information available for a third party. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of this tutorial. Thank you very much for your attention, and do please stay in contact with SPC if you have further questions about OLLO, feedback, and if you have any issues. Thanks again, folks. Fair fishing and safe journeys out there. Goodbye.